Welcome back to Spider-Man versus the Kingpin. So now,
The amazing
we're going
finale.
to face the Kingpin himself, actually. So
All right.
Complete with a cigar.
time to end this. So you see, Dwez, what happens is this is kind of a reverse of the 2018 game, where instead,
Wait, is that the robot from RoboCop?
Instead of the what's it called? The Ed 209?
Yeah.
In the 2018 Insomniac game, we start by defeating the Kingpin, and then we gradually fight all the other Spider-Man villains. In here, we start by defeating all of the other Spider-Man villains, and then we leave the Kingpin as the last one. So
I can see he's still fond of turret sections.
yeah. Why am I fighting Dick Tracy? Clones? I don't.
Well,
yeah,
Spider-Man is no stranger to clones.
Hey, Pedro, why are you all punching? Why when you defeat the villains, why do you always punch them in the crotch?
It's super effective.
Because it's the easiest way of killing enemies, Dwebs.
It's the Johnny Cage way.
And now we're outside the cave, wherever the heck that was.
Wait, is this
Okay.
is this
Again-
Michael Jackson's song now?
Jova, we're probably operating again on the 60s cartoon where locations were interconnected by nothing.
No. They were more connected in the 60s cartoon, I'm sorry. It's simple. Doc Ock has a secret layer in a cave, but go for the cave, get to the secret layer, boom.
Except for the time when Spider-Man 2099 somehow traveled to the 60s cartoon. So.
Well, that was time travel.
Well, actually, no, it's interdimensional traveling, you mean.
Are you on about the ending of Into the Spider-Verse?
Yeah.
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 I mean...
Alright, so the final level...
Boss rush.
Exactly, we're gonna have ourselves a boss rush.
Before we defeated these guys.
That's
boss rush dribs. That's
Well,
what
basically to have Spider-Man arrested all of these, but Kingpin freed them. It happens all the time.
In most of the cutscenes, though, you can kind of see Spider-Man actually having them escape or, being distracted so they escape on
Can
their
you
own,
believe
so-
the amazing boss design?
Punch. Yeah.
I over here, punch. Coming at me from there, punch. Oh, is he done?
Yep, he's done.
Yeah,
And now
he's
Mysterio.
gone.
So yeah, let's keep punching him in the crotch.
Pedro, stop punching Jake Gyllenhaal in the crotch.
But Dwibs, this makes the boss a complete joke, as you can see. There you go, see?
And he's down for the count.
He probably needs a hug.
Jake
This is
Gyllenhaal was pathetic in the role.
well, that's the thing about Mysterio, Dwibs. Mysterio doesn't actually have any strong super strength or anything. He's just an illusion guy, basically. He makes illusions.
The reason why he was so powerful in Shadow Dimension was because the tablet actually gave him enhanced his illusions.
Yeah, and not to mention, again, going back to what
Electro knows how to dodge.
as you can see through Electro's design, this game is clearly going for the 1960s aesthetic.
Wait, hold on. Electro had that design even in the 90s, too.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, true. You're right. Huh.
Only recently
only
we
really
decided
with
that his costume was a bit too much.
It's only really with, mid-2000s or 2010s when they started changing up the costumes drastically.
I think in terms of modernizing Electro, I think the look Insomniac gave him is pretty much a pretty good compromise.
It's fine. It's not my favorite, but it's fine.
It's better than the one of the Ultimate Universe and the one Amazing Spider-Man 2 used just generic blue man copy of Dr. Manhattan.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, in fact, to the point where in the Ultimate Comics, he's literally nude.
Yeah.
The thing about Electro.
How are they going to pull off this
Shadow-
costume?
One at a time.
Remember, Shadow Dimension does the joke about, cover your pants, because,
Although, how the hell are they going to pull this costume off in real life?
That's easy. They can just modernize it by, making the whole star look thing be more like actual legitimate style.
In the PS4 version, the scar that Electro has on its face resembles the star shape that this mask has here. So we can go with that.
And if they did want to go,
it's a bit edgy, but it works.
And if they
this
did want
would
to go
work into the
classic,
Spider-Verse.
Yes,
not
yes,
a
Jova.
okay, I mean, if they make it look in a certain way, they can technically make it work on a live-action movie. It's just a matter of concept and whatnot.
Exact. I mean, we're using the classic appearance for the classic costume for
tip, by the
Mysterios,
way.
even with the fishbowl, so might as well.
A little tip while finding this boss rush: make sure you don't go. Make sure you go slowly and start fighting a boss as soon as that boss appears. Because if you go all the way to the end of the hallway, all the bosses that will keep showing up as you go for the level. So you'll basically be.
They'll start ganging on you, Jesus.
So
Okay, that's actually an interesting punishment, you know, if you try to game the system.
It is, but it also is kind of a a very obnoxious difficulty spike, because up until this point the bosses have been practically complete jokes. So
I mean, technically,
and as Tay would say,
they are still jokes. They're just jokes that are getting up on you.
Exactly. Thanks.
Venom,
Thanks.
you were the toughest one before. What happened now?
That's just the thing. As Tay would say, the game's idea of upping the difficulty is by throwing everything in the kitchen sink. So
Yeah.
So how you beat Venom here now without the church bell? A
I
sonic
think
wave?
you just need to avoid him.
basically, what you have to do is you have to collect all the keys that you've collecting over the course of the game. And you have to put the keys in this device so that we can stop the bomb from exploding. The problem is Venom cannot be defeated because, well, yeah, he's okay. He cannot be defeated, but he can be stunned briefly. So now, while Venom is brief. Okay, what you have to do. There you go. See. But basically, when you can use the item, the keys by.
When you blew up the city.
I was showing the bad.
Pedro.
I was showing the bad ending.
The bad ending.
What do you mean I screwed up? No. I was totally doing that on purpose to show you the bad ending.
That was an actual nice effect.
So Spider-Man
wow.
destroyed
You
the-
actually-
Christ.
So there you go.
This is for calling us jokes, I guess. Well,
Be careful, you bully in high school.
Anyway, yeah. Watch it.
Hold on, wait, hold on. Shouldn't there be 6 of them?
That's
yeah,
because
that's why Doc Ock doesn't come back. Neither does the Lizard.
that's because I already defeated the Vulture and Mysterio before we jump cut to this Jova. The basic point is you don't actually have to defeat any of these bosses. Actually, your main goal is to actually do the keys here so you can stop the bomb and the level will end. However, obviously, you should at the very least defeat a couple of them, because trying to get all the keys with every single one getting up on you is a fucking nightmare, as you're seeing right now. However,
Hey, just an everyday for Spider-Man.
However, if you have enough life bar, which I do, you can basically punch your way through it and manage to go through without having to defeat everybody. There you go.
Guys, Spider-Man's putting the keys in. Should we step up our efforts?
Well, we're hitting him as much as we
There you
can,
go.
but he's
And they
not
run
going down.
and they run
Pussies.
and they run away like pussies at the moment you put in the final key.
So let me get this straight. When the bomb
And now
is
we're
going
fighting.
Bullseye?
Why are we fighting Bullseye? Why are we fighting
Looks like-
Bullseye?
It's a
looks
Daredevil
like-
enemy.
He looks like Captain America.
What the heck is Bullseye from Daredevil doing here?
Oh, and
Titania?
no, Joe. That's another Daredevil enemy. I forgot what she's called.
Electra?
Okay,
No.
No, no,
Nightshade,
that's
I think
red.
she's. No, hold on.
I get
So,
that. It's like,
Daredevil villains.
hey Teo, it's like the old 2003 game. They're just throwing these classic characters
Okay.
without giving any context.
Okay. To be fair, they tend to work for Kingpin, who also sometimes is a Daredevil villain. So I guess it doesn't. I guess it kind of makes sense.
Typhoid Mary. There you go. That's who she is.
I think the problem is that, Joe, but they don't give any context to newcomers. They're just here. Like,
Okay,
Just to
to be fair, Spider-Man's no stranger to having villains from other
What are you
heroes.
doing,
but-
Mary Jane?
okay, so, aside from that nuclear ending we just saw earlier, there's actually two different. Well, actually, is it? Yeah, it is.
Really, Kingpin, you're so old-fashioned to hang Mary Jane over a fiery pit? Come on! Even Adamless Batman is shaking his head from
Why
the
not just dangle her off a very high building? It worked with Gwen Stacy.
Green Goblin at its old.
I don't
Yeah.
really like how this game treats Mary Jane as nothing but blames on the trust. But regardless, there are 3 endings in this game. The bad ending that we saw earlier, the nuclear ending. There's another bad ending. Just like Comic Zone, if you're not quick enough, or here you go. Actually, never mind. Yeah, I forgot about this. Never mind. 4 endings. 4 endings. So this is the ending that happens if you allow the Kingpin to defeat you.
Thought it was fire, not acid.
Huh. Weird change. Oh my god.
The Kingpin, why are you changing proportions every time the camera changes position?
Whoa!
Holy shit!
And there you go, the Kingpin won.
That's surprisingly.
Spider-Man! Spider-Man!
Yeah, that's
Die
surprising
like
power.
a spider-kid!
Alright,
That was dark.
so that's the second bad ending. There's another bad ending, which is if you manage to defeat Kingpin, but before saving Mary Jane. Again, much like in Comic Zone, you have to defeat the final boss quickly if you want to save your girlfriend.
Yeah, I was thinking about that.
Peter, what are you doing?
Not now, honey. I'm trying to think of a way to beat this guy. Oh,
Yeah, the way to defeat him, as you can see, is basically web him up and then punch him.
of course he has the anti-web acid on him.
Repel.
The problem is that the Kingpin is incredibly strong, so the major way that I usually use to defeating him is activating my invincibility power-up and then just wailing on him. Which means, of course, if you want to save Mary Jane, you have to come in and defeat the boss as quickly as you can, because as you can see, the game doesn't give you that much time.
Wait,
Tom-
so you can't rescue Mary Jane before defeating the Kingpin.
No, you can't rescue Mary Jane on your own. You have to defeat the Kingpin fast if you want to save Mary Jane.
Spidey, look at the fire pit.
Not now. I'm too busy concentrating on the fight at hand here.
Your girlfriend's dead. Again.
I'm not listening. Also, she's my wife.
I could use a little help.
Whatever. Another one of your
That was so
loved ones
stupid.
died.
That was so stupid in the Clone Wars movie where. Hold on.
Wait, that was a clone. Oh, well,
No.
Star Wars.
I was just making a reference.
Hello, he just shakes his head like that. Oh.
It's just like in the animated series, kind of.
Oh, no.
Oh, and the police, of course, arrest him for that.
What's going on here? Kingpin's your man. His bomb is in the other room. I disarmed it with keys I took from his henchmen. You're under
And they instantly believe him.
So why didn't you instantly believe him at the beginning of the game?
We're sorry for suspecting you, Spidey.
Again, it's traditional Marvel citizen behavior.
Again, it's
Of course, classic.
Again, it's a good thing the MCU doesn't do this citizen stuff.
Kinda.
You know, Jova, considering it's surprising that no one that tried to do the more Marvel and Capcom mashup actually tried to have an hypothesis on how Phoenix will try to not have the King
Mary
again.
Jane died.
Oh, yeah. In fact, there's one thing I would love to see is actually an idea of how Phoenix could possibly be the best means of helping clean up crime permanently. Like, sure,
So,
superheroes put the criminals away, but Phoenix could be the
Yeah,
guy who
this
does
is
the
how you
legal
say
work.
Mary Jane. Do your best to use the shit out of the invisible power up and wail away on the Kingpin on the crouch as much as you can and be as that's
Pedro,
yes, Dwibs.
what was that you mentioning about the Clone Wars?
No, that scene from Clone Wars that's so stupid where Anakin is all is surrounded and he's like, I could use a little help, and then that character that's his apprentice, from that movie,
Ahsoka.
rescues him, and then he gets madder. I had everything under control. If you had everything in control, then why did you?
He's so edgy.
Stupid movie. Go ahead. Moving on.
I'll agree with you there, Pedro.
Mary Jane is unconscious.
No, that's a thing to it. He literally contradicts himself in the span of seconds.
More like he goes full tsundere.
You'll find his
Unnecessarily.
But why are you doing the tsundere thing with Anakin Skywalker of all
Like I
characters?
said, unnecessarily.
It's one of the few Star Wars opinions where I actually agree with Pedro.
So
Anyway, the basic.
that pulls.
Anyway, the basic gist of it is,
Oh, wait, hold on, let me listen.
This is all very touching, but you're wasting these officers' time.
Yeah, as usual.
Lawyers will have me out by dinner.
Wanna bet? If we get Matt Murdock on this case,
I actually love the story when Spider-Man actually after Kingpin does like a threat to like that, he actually manages to get in jail as Peter Parker and absolutely wails the guy.
Oh, hi, Mary Jane.
Yeah,
hi, Mary Jane. You have absolutely nothing to do with this. Nothing to do in this story.
Also, Spidey, you could watch inside, Windows from another angle.
But remember, JJ doesn't like him, so obviously he has to watch without him knowing.
Spider-Man guilty, of course. The usual for the Daily Bugle.
We don't have all the facts yet.
Mr. Jameson, the city death said to make a special edition and reprint the front page. Spider-Man's innocent.
What? No, he can't be.
That rubs. Also, why is Venom there?
No. I think that's a. Oh, is that a statue?
It's a statue that I don't understand why it's there. Like whatever.
Funny background event, I guess.
And that was the end of Spider-Man. What? I guess the versus Kingpin is no longer. I guess it was just called Spider-Man. That's the plot twist. Whatever.
Sure,
Moving on. All right. So yeah, that was Spider-Man versus the Kingpin for the Mega CD. Well, in this case, she's not, because this time we saw the good ending.
No. I wish I had done that during that other ending.
Well, remember this, every time in any ending, the credits are always the same. It's always this song. Whatever.
Alright, can I go first?
Go ahead.
Well, I will say, the gameplay looks alright, aside from the easy as all fuck bosses. And the cutscenes are really funny.
Yeah.
Especially the game over ones where they go into. I swear these are the most elaborate game over / continue screens I've ever seen. They go into full painstaking detail as to how Spider-Man got into a game over situation
and how he gets out.
Or doesn't get out.
True.
And I don't think even the Mortal Kombat game overs were this in depth.
There you go, music by Spencer Nilsson, of course.
For game over wise, but of course Spencer Nilsson made a good soundtrack. So he made Sonic CD's US one.
String Time. Lead vocals by Eric Martin, who would later also make some vocals for Sonic games. All right.
I'd have thought Pastiche would have had a couple of. Would have made good choices for the.
My guess is Dwebs. The developers prefer the more rockin' soundtrack.
Plus, Nielsen probably hadn't met them yet.
All right.
Next.
Jova.
Yeah. This definitely feels like a comic book come to life in a game, especially for the 90s when it was made. Side score wise, yeah, it has a lot of what makes Spidey fun. At the expense that it kind of does make it a bit broken in some areas, so yeah, you can pretty much swing to your heart's content in levels that allow you to, which allows you to skip the level. You know what, for the game that came out when it did, it's fine because, dude, web swinging with Spider-Man back then was fun as all heck. It's forgiven. The bosses, I wish they could be a bit tougher here and there. However, what they do with, the final boss rush is actually pretty sweet, having them so that they can actually gang up on you. And everything still feels very nice and
the game is dedicated to the memory of Brandon Lee, aka Bruce Lee's son. Okay, I guess the developers were really big fans. Moving on.
I guess. But yeah, the cutscenes are definitely, they're something interesting for that time period. They're definitely funny as all fudge. They're nice and intricate. And you have to agree with Dwibs. This game has some of the most elaborate game over scenarios, to the point where they even give an explanation for how Spidey gets back into the game or whatnot. The pinball one is a bit odd to consider that Spidey escapes prison only to get back into said pinball, but what else? It still is amazing the level of detail they go with the game overs, the alternative endings and whatnot. I definitely applaud that. The production values are, like I said, for the time, very good. So yeah, it's aced in some categories and whatnot, but I'd still say that, if you got the time to spare, this game's worth your look. Your go, and of course your swing time.
It's worth it, if anything, for the amazing soundtrack.
Yeah.
All right. I still have a soft spot for this one. like it's basically, yeah, in a lot of ways it kind of feels like the precursor to what we would see in Spider-Man 2 and the Insomniac video game, because even though it's not that type of open world that we usually think of with Spider-Man 2 and Insomniac's game, it kind of is an open world Spider-Man game, because remember, like we stuck to
the map.
We stuck to the main story, but there's a shit ton of different places you can go just to fuck around and beat bad guys, and there's no side quests or anything. But considering the time that this game was made, obviously having side quests to do in every place, that would probably have been a bit too much to chew for especially considering they already were spending a lot of time just making these cutscenes and everything and the music. But yeah, like it kind of feels like a blueprint for what Spider-Man 2 would later do. Spider-Man 2 is credited a lot for being the blueprint for the Insomniac game. This game kind of feels like the original. Like this game probably set up a lot of a blueprint. It definitely was the first non-linear Spider-Man game that I'm aware of, at least. Because as far as I'm aware, all the Spider-Man games before this one were always the usual side-scrolling stuff. This game was definitely more ambitious and tried to legitimately give you the ability to explore New York and just look for criminals to fight. So that's pretty cool that they bothered to do that. They didn't have to. They could have just turned this into a linear side-scroller. But I appreciate the fact that they wanted to give you something extra to do outside of the main story. So that's nice, even if it's not exactly in depth. So yeah, a blueprint for Spider-Man. So yeah, did Jamie Fristrom and his team at Treyarch maybe play this game? Who knows? We know that Insomniac modeled their game after the Spider-Man 2, but we will never know unless someone interviews the developers of this game. The only
I think a better bet would be, did the developers of Spider-Man 2 play this game?
Yeah, Jamie Freestrom. I guess maybe. Well, the only known comment we have nowadays from the developer of this game, that the developer of this game said that this game was actually one of the highest selling Mega CD games.
I'm not surprised.
Spider-Man's a brand that sells no matter what.
And
I'm not just a bad game like Amazing Spider-Man 2.
And when it comes to side scrollers on the Sega CD, this is definitely one of the better ones. So yeah.
Oh, absolutely.
So it actually uses the FMV capabilities to its advantage rather than just abusing it. So yeah, it's a fun enough game. The gameplay could use some work, because the problem with the gameplay is that the levels are a bit too huge for their own good. It can be pretty easy to get lost in them because there's not enough landmarks, and the game uses a lot of the same sprites. So yeah, it can't. This is a game that clearly was very ambitious for its time, but in a lot of ways that also brought up some problems. The technology just wasn't there at the time for the kind of game that they wanted to make. But it's still nice to see that they wanted to legitimately try to go a few steps further than previous Spider-Man games instead of just making a generic side scroller. So nice for that. The story is just hilarious. Just like it's complete bonkers. It's basically it feels a lot like an episode of the 1960s cartoon in a lot of ways.
I think to me it feels like something in between the 60s and the 90s show.
Yeah, it almost seems like a transition similar to how Sonic Pocket Adventure did.
Yeah.
So yeah, if you're a Spider-Man fan, definitely try this one out. It's an obscure game nowadays. Not a lot of people talk about it. And it's a shame because as far as older Spider-Man games go, this is one of the better ones, I would argue. It definitely is fun to experience, if anything, because of the really fun story and the amazing soundtrack by Spencer Nilsson. So that is that. Teo, close us out.
I pretty much what you said. I really like this game, honestly. Yes, the gameplay may need a few adjustments, to iron out some of the major problems. I noticed for the level design that it's a bit more unbalanced too. When the levels are not cramped or overcomplicated, they're way too easy. You get at the exit, boom, just like that. And some of the boss fights are also a bit unbalanced, like Hobgoblin or Venom. But otherwise, the rest of the game is just a blast. The cutscenes are hilarious, all the rotoscope, Jesus. The voice acting is funny. Ken Clark, as usual, knows what kind of product he's in, and he knows how to handle it for the audience. The story is fine. Yes, Mary Jane could have been used better, I agree. But the rest of the story is fine enough. I actually like also the effort that was put into it for the multiple endings, how you handle situations, and all of this is accompanied by a very amazing soundtrack. I also agree on the legacy, because I want to count also in the PS1 Spider-Man games that we've recorded back then. It does really kind of feel as if Spider-Man games always trace back to the roots, and it's even like a constant evolving, despite the change in stories, continuity, developers and publishers. It seems like a continuous evolution of a product that still maintains at its core, at its bones, the essential elements. It's kind of an amazing story for a video game franchise, which is not that common. So interesting also that to add. But in general, I really had fun with this.
Alright, so that was Spider-Man versus the Kingpin. What other Mega CD games we can find? Well, I don't know, maybe we'll get around...
Night Trap.
Well, Night Trap, I'd rather just play the mod...
PS4 remake, which is totally the definitive edition.
What's the other game?
Well, it is.
Sewer Shark?
Well, maybe we can do Sewer Shark, I guess. Well, whatever. Whatever happens, see you then.
See ya.
See ya.